Money, it affects our everyday life. But how do we make more of it? Manage it. And make sure we make the most of our money. Welcome to Money Mindful, a podcast to teach and support you as you learn to manage your money.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of the Money Mindful podcast. I am your host, Megan Jean Smith. I am a money mindset and life coach for women. I help women get out of self-doubt, overwhelm, and scarcity mindset so they can live the extraordinary life they want to live on purpose. My guest today is an extraordinary businesswoman. She is the queen of SEO, Australian Businesswoman of the Year, International Digital Marketing Mentor, author, podcaster, course creator. I need to take a breath. SEO and copy mentor, and an all-round top chick, Kate Toon. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. We were talking before the show that we've been following each other for ages and trying to do this podcast for ages. So I'm excited that we're doing it. Hurrah.
Yay. Can I just ask, I don't mean this in a cheeky way, but is there anything you don't do? I think you're a bit of an overachiever now. Come on.
I am. Obviously, I am an overachiever. I think I've done all the things, but I didn't do them all at the same time. So it looks impressive now, but it's like they all happened one by one over a long period of time, 12 years into my business. So it's not like I did it all yesterday. It's not quite as impressive as it sounds.
All right. Well, give us the run. Give us the blurb of Kate Toon, who you are, and also tell us a little bit about SEO, because I'm pretty sure there's a few people who are going to be listening going, what the F is that? What are we talking about here? Tell us who you are, what you do. Tell us all the things.
Yeah. So, I mean, my business started very differently to what it is now. So about 12 years ago, I went out on my own and I marketed myself as a freelance copywriter. And I worked as a freelance copywriter for about 5 or 6 years. And my area was SEO, so search engine optimization, which really just means getting your website found on the Google. We don't really talk about Bing and DuckDuckGo and Yahoo because they don't really have much market share. So trying to connect your content with your audience, but also making sure it ticks Google's boxes as well. And we could talk about that all day. There's a lot to it. You know, there's technical aspects, there's the words that you use on the page, there's building links from other sites. But at the end of the day, the reason why I chose that topic was it was a bit of a gap in the market. So I knew how to do it. It was how I'd got my business profile so high. And people started to say, well, how come whenever I type in anything to do with copywriter, you're ranking number one? And I'm like, aha, I could tell people how to do this and make my millions. But also there were no women in the space at all at that point. There was one lady in Australia called Heather Smith. A couple of she's in America, a couple of other Americans, no one in Australia. So as a woman, I thought that was a great space because the male SEO groups were very intimidating. They were a little bit belittling. So I thought, I could be the go-to person as a woman. So then I kicked that off. And now, you know, my business has got 3 bits. It's really the recipe for SEO success, where I teach people how to rank on Google. It's got courses, resources, a podcast, the Clever Copywriting School, where I teach copywriters how to be better copywriters, has courses, a membership, a job board, and a conference, a shop, you name it, and a podcast. And then the main thrust of my business now is the Digital Master Chefs, which is my kind of mentor group where I teach people how to use digital marketing to make more money in their business. You know, what to do, what not to do, what to focus on, and a bit of a process. So yeah, it's a lot, but I love it.
Yeah, it is a lot. And we're going to circle back to this because we definitely want to find out how to make more money in our business. Okay. So let's just put that as a note aside. But first of all, can you just give us a time frame? Like how long, like when you're talking, when you got this going, I mean, have you been in business? I know it doesn't seem like you've been in business for 5 minutes, but can you give us a little picture of how far back we're talking?
Yeah, so I started my business when I was pregnant, 5 months pregnant, because I was working in an ad agency and I was a contractor. So there was going to be no maternity leave. And I I knew that, I wanted to take some time off to be with my son. My husband didn't have a job at that point. He just started his own business teaching French. He had one student. So I was the breadwinner. So I started it all off 5 months pregnant. And I know that was about 12 years ago because my son is nearly 12. There you go. I'm really good at maths. And so those first couple of years were horrific. And then I had I did the copywriting for about 5 years. Then I launched the recipe course, very small, very little. So that was about 5 years ago. And I launched Clever Copywriting School the same year. And coincidentally, it was when my son went to school. Big change in your life when your kid goes to school. So I launched both those products then. They were small, there wasn't much to them. And then over the last 5 years, I've just grown them. The Digital Master Chefs I launched 2 years ago. And that one has grown like super quickly. Like the Clever Copywriting School has taken a long time to get to like 400 or so members. Digital Master Chefs has only been around for a couple of years, and that's got 200, 300 members really quickly. So I think I've got slightly better at doing what I do. But overall, it's 12 years since I started.
Okay, I think that's really good to make note, because I think so often we hear about women having this amazing success, and then we use that as a way to make ourselves feel bad, or we use it against ourselves. So I'm glad we covered that. Anyone listening, starting a business, unless you're 12 years in, get over it. It's okay. You're doing well.
Super important. It's really important. And I'm glad that you highlighted that. The other thing I think that's really important to highlight is, not all business women have the same adventure. So, I spoke at an event recently, and there were 3 other like entrepreneur types on stage, and they were talking about their success, which had happened in like 2-3 years. But then all 3 of them said that they hadn't taken a salary for the first 3 years because their husbands had supported them. And I'm like, well, therefore, for the first 3 years, your business didn't really make enough money to pay you a salary. That's wow. I'd love to have a husband that supported me. And unfortunately, I don't. Quite the opposite. I supported him. So that's a real thing as well. People don't talk about that. Like, how much money do you need to earn? How much money are you? Do you know what I mean? I think that's a real issue that's not very transparent as well.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to that initial stage when you said you were 5 months pregnant. And look, it doesn't surprise me that you started the business then, because this is just my opinion, but this seems to be a common theme with women. They have children, and then this big life transition happens. I mean, not only physically, and we're made a human in the world, but also just in our own life. Like suddenly it's like, no, I'm going to do life differently. But with your husband not even working and you were pregnant, that's pretty ballsy. Did you have any, were you going down some personal development thing, or were you just like hardcore?
Pure desperation, no savings, renting a tiny 1-bedroom house so my son was just like a cot in the corner. We were poor, and there was no self-discovery. I just knew I wouldn't get maternity leave because I'm a contractor, and I had no savings at all. So I had to start earning money as quickly as possible. So, those first couple of months when I was pregnant, it was relatively easy because there was no baby, and, a bit uncomfortable, but it was doable. When he was first born, it was really, really hard. And that first year, there is no glamour to that first year. It was just a real struggle, a lot of mum guilt. My parents aren't here, no friends who had babies. It was just me and the baby on my own, trying to work with one hand while breastfeeding with the other. It was miserable. And I don't like to put any gloss on that, because I can look back now and go, oh, it's so cute. Do you remember when it wasn't cute? It was just really horrid. But that first year, I think I probably made about 60K, which obviously was nowhere near what I was earning I was running an ad agency as a contractor with an amazing day rate, but it was enough, it was enough to get by. And then it slowly improved over time.
Good on you. I find that so inspiring, like chills inspiring, because that is fucking hardcore. Like I've had kids not that long ago, right? Like my youngest is only 4, and I have spoken with lots of women now who have built businesses when they've had really young kids. And to be honest, I didn't feel capable of doing that. Like I didn't feel like I had the mental capacity to do that when I had babies. And so when I hear other women have done it, I'm frankly in awe. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't very good, Megan. Let's be honest. I don't think I was amazing. I don't think I was firing on all cylinders. I was doing bits and bobs. I did a bit of graphic design, which was appalling. I built some websites. I did bits of copy. I had a few lucky breaks as well, where I was able to connect people and get like a referral payment, like a 10% referral payment, and that was a real lucky break. But yeah, I don't think I was doing my best work, and I don't think that was true of the second year or the third year either. But I tried. It was imperfect action, and all I cared about in that first year, didn't care about having a brand, didn't care about having a really pretty desk with Kiki K furniture on it, didn't take photos and share them on social media. I just worked, head down, bum up to make money. And that I was in that kind of emu stage for the first 4 years. There was no kind of, how do I want to position myself, and how do I want to, and I'm going to have a photo shoot with confetti. It was like, nah, I'm just going to work. So it wasn't glamorous at all.
Yeah, but that's what it takes sometimes.
It is. And I didn't do any personal development. I didn't do any courses. I didn't go to any events because I didn't have the money. It was a luxury to me, So again, that was a different approach because, I'm sure, and I know you talk about this on the podcast, a lot of people spend a lot of money when they start their business on things they don't really need to, which means they have to make more money. And it's like, if you just don't spend, a great way of making money is not to spend it. I know that. And you've got to invest in yourself, of course, but not necessarily on day one. You can get quite a long way under your own steam without paying a mentor or buying a book or doing a course. You can get quite a long way without going external. You don't need to do that on day dot.
So what do you think your mindset was? Survival?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Survival and money. And I'm lucky to a degree that I had worked in agencies, so I knew a few things, but being an employee to having your own business is entirely different. So things like money management and marketing, because I'd never had to market myself. I just turned up and did a job. So, that I didn't have at the first stage. And, I'm sure we'll talk about that today. My financial management was wretched in those early days. And I got into huge debt with the tax office because I was trying to do it all myself and I didn't know what I was doing. So it's not like I didn't make mistakes in those first 4 years either. I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, but that's how you learn. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to learn the hard way.
We do.
And the tax department can be kind of mean.
They can. They can, but again, I think it's one of those things where we think, oh, it's really complicated, it's really hard, I'll give it to an accountant and they'll just take care of it, which is just really irresponsible when at the end of the day, if the accountant messes up, it's really you that will pay the price, not the accountant. So I just didn't pay attention, and my income started to increase, but I didn't save any more for my tax. And then at the end of the year, things like GST and everything all hit, and I just didn't have the money. And it was about $50,000 in debt that I got at that stage. So that was fun.
Right. Okay. So let's fast track to the future now. So what's changed?
In terms of money or in terms of the business?
Yeah. In terms of money management.
Oh, I mean, I think, when you have a shock like that, then it's unfortunately, as we said, you sometimes don't fix things until they break. So after that, me and he got in debt as well. And we both worked very, very hard to pay all that off. We managed to pay it all off in a couple of years. And then after that, I really took control of my money. I still find it challenging. I've had to do a lot of self-education around money. I don't think I have money blocks necessarily. People talk a lot about money mindset. I don't think I have issues with that. When we talk, you might say that I do. But I didn't know the language and I didn't understand it and I kind of dismissed it. So, even just basic stuff like, getting my zero properly set up because I set it up myself and I didn't set it up correctly, really understanding the tax brackets, really understanding when is a good time to set up a company rather than being a solopreneur, implementing profit first, having separate accounts for different parts of my business, saving, using my offset account, just all this stuff to now where, do you want me to talk about now? I don't know.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So now, I'm at the stage now where I have no debt. I don't have a mortgage. I just paid my mortgage off last year. I have a fair amount of money in the company sitting there, which I can't draw down because I'll get taxed on it. And I've been able to buy a property through my family trust. So that's another way of constructing your business. Obviously, I don't own it outright, but that's in my investment property. That's, planning for the future. Finally paying myself, a couple of years ago, I started paying myself a proper salary, paying my super. And then next, the challenge for me for this year is to try and get my head around, EFTs, share market, and, move towards, not necessarily that I'm going to do it all, but I want to understand it all. And so that's my project for this year, is to not just go, oh, shares, they're too hard, I can't do that. Maybe I can, maybe I won't, but maybe I can. So that's my plan for this year.
I'll tell you right now, it's not too hard. We can have have a chat later. It's totally not.
But it's like when I talk about SEO, people are like, it's like we set these things up as things that we can't do in our minds. And it's nonsense, because we're capable of anything. You just break it down into little chunks and it's fun. I actually wrote the ComSec website, Commonwealth Bank's share website. I wrote the whole thing, didn't absorb any of it. So, I know that it's in there somewhere. It's just I haven't unlocked that little valve yet. And when I do, it will all come gushing out at some point and I'll work it all out.
Wow. Okay. Let me ask you about this then, because you just illustrated right then what a money block is, right? I don't really use that terminology, but it's when we don't even realize we have barriers. We just don't even have the awareness that something is a barrier to us because of the way we think. It's not a true barrier really for you, because you're looking at, you're already curious, like thinking about investigating shares. But for some people, things like shares or starting a business or anything like that, it's totally shut down for them, because they're just like, no, that's too hard. Starting something new financially is often a block for people, because they just literally have a thought in their mind that I don't know how to do that, or that's too complicated. And I know this sounds so simple, but it really is just a thought. Like, it's just a thought. None of us knew how to do anything before we started doing it. And I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I think it's worth saying. Can you imagine a kid, like a baby, taking a few steps and going, oh, I don't know how to do this. Let's
exactly. I think, I should start using the term SEO blocks, because I see the exact same thing there. People just decide that they can't do it. It's not for them. It's someone else's remit. It's not for them. And it just takes a good teacher, someone to break it down, the right resources, some support, and a little bit of bravery, and, often we talk about being entrepreneurs, and really being an entrepreneur, all that really means is that you take a risk in business, and everything in business is a risk. Money is a risk. Learning something is a risk. But, through risk and being brave is how we grow and become better. And, as you said, if I, when I started my business, met me now, I think I'd almost be intimidated by what I've managed to do, and think, wow, I could never do that. And yet I'm the same person. It's me. I did it. And it took me a while. It took me by degrees. When I started to earn really good money, I didn't do anything with it at all at first. I just sat with it. I don't want to take immediate action. I wanted to sit with that new experience of not being poor and just let that sit with me for a bit. It took me a good 2 years to then go, okay, I've not been poor for a while now, and all I'm doing is replacing perfectly good cushions with new cushions. Maybe I could do something better than just swapping cushions. Maybe I could do something bigger. Maybe I am capable of that. So yeah, it's a journey.
That's actually really amazing, because a lot of people who make money, the first thing they do is they spend it, because they, you hear that stuff about lottery winners or whatever, but it's literally not being used to having the capacity to have that much money. We're used to having the capacity to have a certain amount of money. And then if we get more money, it's like, okay, spend. I just find that so fascinating, but that's really interesting that you didn't spend it. You actually got to know it.
A little bit. I think it's also because I didn't believe it, and I was worried that it wouldn't continue, because my business is unpredictable to a degree, because I don't buy ads. Everything that I earn through organic content marketing. So I can't go, if I spend $5, I'll get this much return. This is the other myth of entrepreneurialism where people say, oh, I had a $200,000 launch, and then you find out they spent $180,000 on Facebook ads. That's not me. I don't spend anything on ads. So, but then that's also a risk because I can't quantify exactly what my conversion is going to be. So I also wanted to sit with it for a while and see if it was going to continue. And now I can see that it will. And I do much more around forecasting and planning and looking at months that aren't good and thinking of products I could launch in those months so that the income is consistent. I mean, I moved from a course launch model where I earn, on 3 days of the year, I learned 90% of my income, which is very nerve-wracking. And now I have 2 memberships. So that recurring income is coming in every month. So I have this kind of level that I have. And I also really deeply got to understand what it costs to run my business. How much money do I have to earn before I actually earn any money? And that's another thing I think people don't think about as well.
Yeah, that's huge. Actually, knowing what you need to charge as well to
Mm.
feed the business, because the business is an entity in a sense, and you need to, like, if you think of money coming in as fuel that keeps the business alive. And I think that's something that gets overlooked, even for myself. I'm relatively new in starting a new business now. And these are things that I have worked out along the way, really by trial and error. And that's what business is. You just try shit out, and sometimes stuff works. And then other times you realize, oh, hang on, no, we need to change this. This doesn't work. But you learn from doing, in my opinion. But I'm really curious because you said on your website that you work between school hours, which is kind of like the mecca for mums everywhere. It certainly was for me. That was this pinnacle I wanted to reach, to be able to earn money on my terms, but when my children were at school, because that's massive. Like, that's just so valuable to mums and dads as well. I don't want to, but what would you say to a mum listening now? Because I know I have a lot of listeners who are aspiring entrepreneurs who want to do things like this. What would you say are some of the first things to focus on when starting a business? The actual important stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, lots of people get very excited about the fluff of starting a business, the non-essentials. Really, you can start a business with a laptop and a mouse. You don't need anything else at all. You don't even need a desk. You can just do it on your kitchen table. So, anything that you're buying that you think, oh, this would be nice, try not to buy it, I'd say. I know that sounds really negative, but, for the first year, it's an experiment. And the fastest thing you want to be able to do is pay yourself a salary. So the quicker you can get to that, the better. And most people ruin that by wasting money on other things. Like, do you really need that course? Do you need to be in that mastermind? Do you need that book? Do you need to go to that event? No, you really, really don't. Unless you literally have no ideas of your own. And then I suspect you're probably not an ideally suited person to start your own business, because most of us are starting our own business because we have a fire in our belly and an idea of what we want to do. And yeah, we might need some help along the way to point us in the right direction, but fundamentally we know roughly where we're going in this direction. So I think that's really, really important. In terms of the school hour thing, look, I need to be transparent there. That wasn't always the case. There have been, especially when I set up Recipe, I was servicing copywriting clients and trying to build something. There were a lot, not necessarily late nights, because I'm not good after 3 o'clock. There were a lot of early mornings. There was a lot of swearing at my computer. There was a lot of uploading videos that were due to go live at 10 at 9:55. And there was a lot of imperfect action. Like the first time I launched my course, like, it was only $400. I'll be honest, it was pretty rubbish. It wasn't rubbish, but it was okay. Do you know what I mean? Now it's like over 2,000 and it's way better, but it's taken me a long time to do that. So there were late nights. I think in terms of first steps in action, you're going to love this, but get a decent accounting platform from the day one. If you can't afford to spend $50 a month on Xero, your business has a problem. That'd be the first $50 I would be spending, even before I paid myself. Get a good accounting platform, get a good accountant as well, get a bookkeeper to set up your Xero. And then every $100 that comes in gets dispersed in the right way. I'd also highly recommend starting profit first from the day dot. Like, people are like, oh, I need to earn a certain amount of money before I start. No, you don't. You can do profit first if you've got $10. But, it makes you understand what money is yours. And another final point there, something that you said, I think it's very hard to separate your business from yourself and your business money from your own money. So a real step forward for me was when I started a company. And then I started to realize that the business is an entity, to your point, and that the money in that, like it flowing in, it's not directly tied to me. It's a separate beast. And on the flip of that, because I did profit first, I was over saving for things like my GST and my tax. And at the end of the year, there'd be this lump of money. And it'd be like, well, whose money is that? Is it my money? And it's like, yeah, it's all my money because it's my business. I don't have to take it now. It can sit there. But I kind of didn't even think of that as my money. Weird. I don't know. It's messy, isn't it, money?
Well, when you're in business, it's a new way of looking at things. And I want to second what you've just said about the whole accounting thing. I have a bookkeeper already and have Xero and all of that stuff set up. And I think I absolutely agree. Don't wait to do that stuff in your second, third, fourth year when it's so messy and you've stuffed it all up, and because you don't know what you're doing and you're making mistakes all over the place. And even for someone, I'm not an accountant, I'm self-taught, but I do know a lot about money and money management, like that side of things, but just because I'm interested in it. But I'm not a trained accountant and I don't have those skills. And when I was working with my bookkeeper, she was sort of pointing things out to me like, you know, that's not tax compliant. And I'm like, no, I did not know that that's not tax compliant. Thanks for pointing that out. Let's get that sorted straight away. So they're the kind of things that I think also set you up in the mindset that this is a legit business.
It's so important. I mean, the money I've spent on undoing the mistakes that I made in my business and my Xero, and, you know, the dreaded fear of being audited. Now I have the most anal bookkeeper in the world. I love her. And, you know, she goes through every single thing. And now, you know, I've got a company, I've got a family trust. It's complicated. As your business gets bigger, it gets complicated. There are salaries, there's dividends, there's all these other parts that, you know, you have to learn this new language, and you need someone to help you with that. Like, we're not all born out of an egg knowing how to handle money. Just as in my world, people don't understand digital marketing and they're like, well, I don't understand what to do with Clubhouse or LinkedIn. And it's like, to me, that comes easy. That's easy peasy. Money is a bit harder. So while I said, you know, don't spend money on courses and things in your first year, I think you're better off on getting some really good professional advice from people you trust and getting things set up well. And if there's one thing you do in your business, it's get the financials set up well from day one. Everything else can flow. You can mess up on Instagram. You can be appalling on LinkedIn, but you can't be appalling on your tax return. Can't mess around with the Australian taxation rules. You know, that is something you can't mess up on. Messing up on Instagram's fine, you know? So I just think people often get those the wrong way around, and they're desperately worried about having a pretty Instagram feed where they haven't paid themselves a salary for 6 months. It's like priorities, people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious because you're still living to tell the story. You have a successful business now, and you've already revealed that you've made heaps of mistakes, and you're still alive.
I'm still here. Yeah, and this is it. There's been whole years where the you know, the word of the year has been recover, or you know, just continue. And this year is a continue year. This year I'm trying to earn slightly less than I earned last year because I want to work a lot less. So I'm trying to see if by working a lot less, can I make either the same and be comfortable with earning slightly less? Because also there's this horrible drive, and it was very much in the male zone of entrepreneurialism. Now it's slipped into the female zone, that you are not a legitimate human unless you're making 7 figures a year, which is utter nonsense. And so I'm out there trying to spread the message of that's nonsense, and we're going to drive ourselves into burnout and depression if we put that on our backs as well, because we've already got to be perfect mums, great lovers, we've got to be thin, we've got to have nice hair, we've got, oh man. So I'm kind of trying to dismiss that 7-figure thing and be an example of that, you know, and come back down off the mountain. Because for me now in my life, other things are more important than the number of zeros at the end of my bank account. You know, I mean, I don't want to be poor. I've been poor. There's nothing glamorous about being poor, but I don't want to just aspire to wealth for the sake of wealth. which I think is kind of the message that's being pushed a little bit now on social media and stuff.
Well, I think what you're highlighting there is a different set of skills. You've got your business I'm assuming you've got your business to 7 figures if you're talking in that realm. Kate's
Yeah.
nodding, by the way, just so
Yeah, sorry.
you guys know. But then now to keep, I mean, I know you're saying that, earning less and in business, when you do grow your business, there's going to be years where you plateau or do earn less because you're developing certain different things. But I see this as where it's a different skill. It's not the money-making skill. This is a taking care of yourself skill and producing
totally.
at the same rate. Can you
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah. And I actually got some actual figures to show you because I know you love real figures, but I thought this would be interesting for your listeners in terms of that growth. You talked about I've actually got percentages for you, Megan, if you want them, because I think that's really interesting. I'm just trying to find them for you now. Let's have a look. I probably won't be able to find them. Maybe I'll have to pause and I'll find them in a minute. But what I've got is a breakdown of how much my income increased year on year and how much my revenue increased year on year, which I think is another really important thing that people don't talk about. What is their revenue to expenses? That is, most people just, I've got it. I found it. Do you want to hear it?
Yes. Yay.
So it only starts from 2013 because that's when I had my tax issue. We'll call it that, shall we? So from 2014, it went up. My revenue went up 5%. And the next year, 32. The next year, 22. The next year, 7. The next year, 109. The next year, 21. And then this last year, 15. So you can see there were some years 7%, 5%, not huge. That huge leap, 109, was the year after I set up Recipe and the Clever Copywriting School. And then now it goes up a little bit each year, but not it's never going to go up 100% again, I don't think. And it would be weird if it did. Like, what the heck would I be doing? But yeah, I just think that's interesting to see those different percentages over the years.
Okay. So one of the numbers that you just read out there, which I think is really interesting, and I hope I recorded this right. You had 1 year when it increased 22%, and then it went back to 7%, and then the following year was 109. I think that's really interesting that you've had a year when you earned less, but then the next year it just skyrocketed.
And it's exactly what you were saying about in the year where it went 7%, I was trying to build something. And I had to understand that I couldn't make as much money that year. And I had to be okay with that because you can't have your cake and eat it. So that's year when I dialed down the client work, which was coming in, earning me a lot of money, but it left me no time to build something new. So I earned less from client work, spent a lot of time building things. And then I saw the fruits of that the following year. And that's when it went up 109. So yeah.
I love that. I think that's a really important point. It's you don't have to be rising all the time, but also when you read out all those numbers, also what stands out to me is the compound effect of being in business. I mean, you said that
it's a lot to do with longevity, eh? It's a lot to do with just sticking around, and over time seeing that growth. And sometimes the growth is so small that you barely notice it, but it's the compound effect that over time there is this progression, and you just have to be patient, which is very hard for most people.
Yeah, because it's boring. Just like what we talked about with setting up your accounts. That stuff is boring. And we like to feel good and excited and feel like, everything's going really well. And to be honest, I think that is also a big factor with people staying in business, because that sort of side of things, it's part of it. And I think it can be looked at in a way that is detrimental to the business. But because it seems like this boring, hard thing that we don't know, but actually if you turn it around and look at it from a different perspective, it's like, yeah, sometimes, I don't know, having a shower or cutting your nails is boring too, but you do that stuff because you just look after yourself,
Well, I think with the right education and the right reframe, as you've just said, you can learn to love your numbers and love doing this and love having spreadsheets and reports and seeing how you're progressing and seeing what happens if you dial this up a little bit. What impact does it have on income? And I love that because I was flying blind. And the thing is, if you don't know your numbers, so I've got my bookkeeper now does me a report every month, and I've set a target for what I want to make this year from a revenue point of view, and then, you know, a true revenue point of view. So profit, you know, and she gives me a percentage of how close I am to that. And just before Christmas, I was at I think I was at 67% towards my goal, but I'm only 6 months through the year. So I'm ahead of myself. And you know what that enables me to do? Take some time off, turn the dial down, because otherwise you will flog yourself, because there's always more we can be doing in our business. And it's like, when is enough? You know, because it'll never be enough. You can always earn more money. You could always work a bit harder. You could always release a new thing, but that's great for a while when you're in it and you're super passionate, but it's not a great way to live your life. This is our life. You know, I've got kids. I want to spend some time with my son. So the numbers give me permission and freedom. And that's why they're not boring. That's why they're so, so important. And that is the quote for the show, Megan Smith. Don't you think though? Like, numbers are freeing. Once you know your numbers, it's freedom. It is freedom, not just financial freedom. It's freedom from stress. It's freedom from comparisonitis, imposter syndrome. I don't care what Sue is doing over there with her launch and her figures that she's telling everybody, because I know my figures and I'm all good and I'm happy and I'm earning enough. And when is enough, you know? So yeah, it's freedom.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. It's having a relationship with your business.
Yep. Yeah, it can't just be a one night stand. It has to be a long relationship, and there's going to be periods where you don't like each other, but overall, you know, you need to find comfort within your business and be able to therefore continue, because as you know, a successful business, a business that's running well, is predictable, and a predictable business can be a boring business. But you know, there's freedom in boredom as well. There's freedom in knowing that if I do this, this will happen. And that's lovely. That's a lovely place to be. And that's what I want for everyone, to be able to pay themselves a salary, to be able to pay themselves super, to be able to know roughly what they're going to earn every month. Yep, they can dial it up or down, depending on whether they want to take a holiday or launch a new thing. But generally, they're pretty solid. Their bills are paid. It's that feeling that I used to have when I'd go to the checkout in Coles and just hope that there was enough money to pay for my shopping, and the mortification of having to put something back. You know, no one ever wants to have that feeling of having to put something back. And that sounds such a small goal when we're talking about dreaming big and 7 figures. I just want to go to Coles and put whatever I want in my shopping trolley and not worry about it. And I think that's actually a real decent human goal.
Yeah, 100%. I'm right with you there. Oh my goodness, there's so many things from what you said that I want to talk about. So let's move it along. First of all, I'd like to know if you have noticed anything when we talk of gender. So you're a very successful businesswoman and you're a woman. And I'm just curious to know if that has been, if you've ever found that an obstacle. I mean, not from your end, but just people thinking like that you're not the owner or anything like that. I'm just curious.
Look, I don't think it's funny, because I don't sort of think of myself as a particularly womanly woman. You know, so, and I don't think I market myself as a womanly woman, although I've just put a picture of myself up as Wonder Woman. So maybe I've changed my tune. So femininity in my business has never been a big deal. Yeah. And I you know, I get on well with men. I've never had groups that are just for women. You know, I never market things as women only. And a lot of female entrepreneurs do that. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But that's not my vibe. So I've had a little bit more difficulty attracting men to my products and services, because I think there's something around them wanting to learn from men, not from a woman, whatever, that's their problem, not mine. But definitely in terms of the successfulness. So a couple of I have never actually really talked about how much I earn online, because I'm not teaching people to earn money. It's not what I do. So, you know, if you're Denise Duffield Thomas or somebody like that you're talking about how much money you make because you're teaching people how to make money. For me, it's like I'm teaching people how to do SEO, which may eventually earn the money, but it's not my thing I'm selling. So I've never talked about it. And then, you know, more recently, I have mentioned a few times what I earn. And people have honestly been shocked. And people have come into, a lot of men via LinkedIn have suddenly been getting in touch saying, oh, maybe we could do a call together and maybe we could do this. And it's like they didn't take me seriously before, because I can come across as quite playful and quite fun in my branding, but I'm very serious about money and I make a serious amount of money. I just don't take myself too seriously. And that's the difference. Another thing was when I won Australian Businesswoman of the Year, like, I don't think people took me seriously as a businesswoman. And while I don't really believe in awards, I'm so glad I won that, because that label meant, it doesn't mean anything to me because I know who I am, but it seems to mean a lot to other people, which is annoying. But I guess you get it, like, because I'm daft on social media and I'm playful and I post pictures of my dog and I'm not there in like a pencil skirt going money, money, holding a calculator. And it's like, that's what people want. But it just shows that you can be a bit of a buffoon. You can be scruffy. You don't have to have a business plan. You don't have to kind of have a degree in business from Harvard University and still be uber successful, make a lot of money if that's what you want to do. So absolutely, I think the female thing had a play in that, and also the way my kind of playful branding had a play in that. And I love when people underestimate me. I think that's fabulous, because then you can just, then you've got the upper hand, really, because they're thinking whatever they want of you and you know who you really are. So yeah, that was a long answer. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I'm so grateful that there are women like yourself and other players, especially in Australia. I work quite internationally, so I'm exposed to a lot of people in America, but I'm very interested in Australian women in business because I'm an Australian. I'm here in Australia. But to me, I'm discovering more and more women like yourself and like people like Leonie Dawson who are so themselves. And I just find that so refreshing and so inspiring to be a living, walking example of, hey, you can just show up as yourself and that's okay. You don't have to be anything. I mean, obviously you have to be selling a product or service that people want that is of value up to them, right? But how you do that is actually up to you and how you come across, and people are going to resonate with you or not. I think this is a good time to talk about that you have a book, it's called Confessions of a Misfit Entrepreneur, and you say things, you describe yourself as a misfit entrepreneur. And can you talk to that a little bit? Like, why do you see yourself like that? And
well, I guess, entrepreneur is a bit of a cliche. We can, think of the kind of, especially the US male entrepreneurs lying on their Porsche, blah, blah, blah. But I think there's also a bit of a female entrepreneur cliche as well. Some of these fabulous people who run large companies, and the way that they put themselves out there. For me, it all comes down to pencil skirts. I don't know why, but I think you know what I mean. It's that kind of like, well presented, beautifully manicured, make-upped entrepreneur who looks like they have everything together. And then on the flip, there's these people who kind of artificially go, oh gosh, I'm having a terrible time looking after my kids, and their hair is artfully messed over like that, and they're holding like a scone. And it's like, that's a photo shoot. That's still not real. It's supposed to be authentic, but it's not. So I think I wanted to show that you can be an entrepreneur and be successful and not do all those things. So, not have a business plan, not have an angel investor, not do joint ventures, not have a huge grasp of money when you start, but have a willingness to learn, market yourself in a fun and playful way. Like, you don't always have to be the smartest person in the room. But the thing I think I hadn't done until really the last couple of years was do what you just talked about, step into the role of being a bit of a role model, because it's uncomfortable to think you're a role model. You feel like you're a bit of a knob, to be honest, like who's looking up to me? But last year, I really noticed that people were looking to me, during the bushfires and the Black Lives Matter and COVID, people were looking to me for, what are you doing? How are you getting through this? What's your advice? And I've never been very comfortable about that. But last year I just decided, well, I'm going to share it's only my opinion, and I'm going to step into that, because it's all very well and good me sitting here thinking I'm earning good money and I have a nice life and I'm doing like this. But if I don't share that and show other people and give them permission to be a scruffy entrepreneur or a misfit entrepreneur, then I'm not really helping. So it's about, I switched over last year. I got over my myself in terms of I can't tell people how to do things because who the hell am I, to, well, I can tell people how I do things and they can take it or leave it. So I've just stepped into that role of being hopefully a role model for people who don't want to have those other people as role models. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, because when I first started my podcast, I didn't have a business. I just started it because I felt passionate about it and I wanted to do it. I was like, let's talk about money, women. Like, let's get it out there in the open. And I mean, ironically, now I've discovered lots of other podcasts where people talk about money. But at the time, I didn't know about them. And I was like, there's no space. I can't find the space. I'm going to create the space, you know? So, but then having so many moments of thinking, oh, well, who's going to listen to me or whatever. And then finding that, oh, people are listening to me and I've got the downloads to prove it, and messages from people saying, you know, I mean, even my daughter's kinder teacher, a couple, like when the podcast first came out, she was like, oh yeah, I never really thought about it. And now I've saved a few $1,000s, and I'm just like,
I
amazing.
know. And this is it, because a lot of people will silently lurk and not necessarily tell you that the impact that you're having on you. You know, I got an email this morning from someone that said, I've been listening to your copywriting pod since 2016 and I downloaded this template, blah, blah, blah. And it's been life-changing. But she didn't told me for the last 5 years, told me today. But all that time I've been helping and I didn't know it. So I think we underestimate the impact we have on other people, even if it's one or two people. And we don't, it's weird, that moment where you actually flip over, and I'm not sure where it happened, into being somebody that's desperately trying to be heard to being somebody that is being heard and therefore has a responsibility about what they're saying, you know, that have to think about it. Because in the first few months, years, it can feel like you're just shouting into the void. And then all of a sudden, without you knowing how, the void starts shouting back. And that's a really interesting moment.
Yeah. And earlier on in the show, you talked about, oh, what word you didn't use? Courage. Maybe you said being brave, like being a bit brave to get out there. And I think that's a thing, because in the beginning, you don't have that feedback from people, and you are just putting yourself out there, and it can feel very uncomfortable and very scary and vulnerable, right? But
Super duper, yeah.
yeah, but as you've illustrated, it's people are listening and people do want what you have. And I think it's, if you can, exactly what you just said, get over yourself, right? And just keep going. And it's not about you. And you kind of do have to get over yourself to keep putting your goodness out into the world and keep helping people, because yeah, obviously you are helping people at a 7-figure business. We would say that I'm pretty sure that's a successful business under many people's definition.
Yeah, but equally not undermine, if that makes sense. So 7-figure business, whoop-de-doo. You know, I'll tell you something that'll make you laugh. Up until about 3 months ago, I didn't realize I was a 7-figure business, because in my mind, I only counted the zeros. And then I realized, oh, no. The bit at the beginning count. I can't tell you how stupid that is. It's like as stupid as, I have a friend who thought approximate meant the exact opposite of what approximate meant. And they're like 47 and they only worked it out last week. You know, just some of these weird things. So, but the 7-figure thing means nothing to me, because what does 7 figures mean? You don't know how much I'm spending on my team, on my salary. You don't know how much it costs me every month just to break even. So it's utter nonsense. I know 7-figure businesses where the owner still is paying themselves 30K a year. You know, it's, oh, we've got to get over this 7-figure thing. I hate it. I hate it so much. And you know, my definition of a successful business is that I can get up in the morning, walk my dog, do a bit of work, finish, maybe go for a run, spend some time with my kid, have some dinner and watch Netflix. That's a successful day to me. And I know that sounds meager, but all I want is to be able to have a nice life and earn enough money to achieve that. And then more than that, I mean, I could push myself so hard, Megan. I'm sure I could get like, you know, to 8 figures if I really wanted to, but I don't really want to. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, everything you're saying, I just can relate to so much, but on a much smaller scale at this stage. But already I'm doing so many things in developing my business about just being the person that I want to be. Like the whole reason I'm doing this is so I can be with my children and my family and have the lifestyle that I want and earn money. I mean, I have a goal to out earn my partner just because he's a doctor and that's been a barrier for me, like thinking that, he's the one who's the primary earner. And then I'm like, no, F that. Why should that be a thing? Let's just do it just for fun, right? Like I
Yeah.
actually want to do it to just be like, this is possible. We can do this. Look, girls, like my girls who are 4 and 6, like this is how we do it. I'm not in a hurry. It's just one step at a time. But I think that we kind of missed that point. And I certainly did in the beginning because I suddenly found myself working at night, working on the weekends, missing out on stuff with my children. And then I was like, hang on a minute. What? This is wrong. This isn't quite right. This isn't why I'm
Yeah.
doing this. And that's such an area that's a skill that needs to be developed, like time management. Why are you even doing this stuff? And working the business so it works for you, because when it serves you, it serves everyone, serves your customers, serves everyone around you.
I mean, I think there will always be periods where you have to work that little bit harder and do the weekends when you're trying to build stuff. But, I have had the startling realization when I'm in some Facebook group helping, some bloke called Barry with a question, and Barry doesn't even say thank you. And I've spent 20 minutes helping him, and my son is in the lounge on his own watching telly. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? This is ridiculous. And you need to have those little aha moments. You need to set boundaries, and you need to understand that there are consequences. So, I see a lot of business owners going, I really love to do what you have and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, are you willing to do this? Are you willing, like, when your kid's not well, to jump on a podcast and make them sit for an hour and no, they'll be okay, and deal with that mum guilt? Are you willing to get on a call at 5 a.m. because you want to be on a podcast in the US? Are you willing to get on a plane, fly to the Netherlands for a week, leaving your son? There are compromises. Do not underestimate the compromises. And I find that a lot of people who want the money aren't willing to do the work to get the money. And that's okay. But understand that there is an exchange. There is always an exchange. It's not going to happen without you giving something up. You can't have it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think many people miss the point. And I want to be very clear, because I don't want to say it's not about the money, because I think that's crap. Like,
Yep.
It is about the money. Like, why else are we in business? If it's not about the money, fine, just give me all your profit, right? Like, when people say stuff like that, oh, it's not about the money. It's like, okay, here's my bank account details, go for it. It is about the money. But for me, the difference is, and the distinction is, it's about the person that I become doing all this stuff. This is why I want to do it, because you learn and grow. I mean, think about who you were when you first had your son, when you were pregnant with your son, you started your business, to how much you've grown and evolved as a human being. I mean, isn't that the cool stuff?
It is, absolutely. And all the people I've managed to come into contact with over the 12 years. But, it's a lot about, you talked about it earlier, it's a lot about persistence and showing up in those 7% years, and in those years where you got tax debt, and in those years where your kids are ill, and still showing up and being in it for the long game and enjoying the struggle, not the destination. You've got to enjoy the struggle, because you will achieve your goals. If you work hard, you will achieve your goals. You'll out earn your husband. I will do whatever I want to do. But it's deeply unsatisfying, because the money comes in that day and you're like, brilliant, it's amazing, woohoo. And then you're like, okay, what next? Because that's just who we are as humans. It's very difficult not to be like that. That's how we're coded as humans, is to strive and to struggle. You've got to enjoy the struggle. You've got to enjoy the boring bits and the setting up the zero, because that is the real truth of business. It's not the sexy bits. It's not, the lunch, the women's lunch with the bag with tissue paper in, or the getting an award, or the whatever. It is the boring bits. That 90% of your business, I think, is going to be pretty boring to some, but you have to find the pleasure in it,
Yeah. And you don't get to this place where suddenly it's better. I think that's a misconception. It's like, if we're striving to get to this place over there that's better than here. No, over there is going to be the same as what it is now. That we're still going to have
different
good
problems. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. I sort of get the impression that we could chat for a very long time. But school trips and being on transport, going to work only takes so much time. So let's wrap this up, I think, Kate. I usually ask at the end if there's any tip, like any ritual or something that you do with your money. I mean, I know we've already kind of covered some stuff that you do in business that you'd be willing to share that somebody might find helpful.
Well, I have the Zero app on my phone and I get an excruciating amount of pleasure out of reconciling my Zero. I'm actually now banned from doing it by my bookkeeper because I'm reconciling it incorrectly. The only thing I'm allowed to reconcile is my PayPal fees, but I still enjoy it. I still really enjoy the swiping. For me, look, it's profit first. I'm sure you've talked about this on the podcast or are planning to. Profit first for me was life-changing. Just having those separate accounts for different money every time $1,000 come in, just splitting it out into GST, income, expenses, tax, and then profit, and watching that little profit account grow up. And that profit is mine. It's not for the mortgage. It's not for Coles. It's not for the business. It's purely to buy sexy things that I want, not necessarily sexy things. You know what I mean? So my phone just went off. That's real life, people. I hope you didn't hear it. But yeah, I think really enjoying watching that money come in and dividing it into the pots, and then having enough money in your bank account to pay your tax bill. I can tell you there is no better feeling in the world. It is honestly the sexiest thing in the world, being able to go, oh, the tax bills come in and I have more than I need. There is nothing better than that feeling. I guarantee you. So that's what I hope everyone can achieve.
Oh, yeah, I'd love that. And Profit First, would you believe I have not actually read that book, but hot tip, I actually have it on my list for book club this year,
Ooh,
but
I didn't
not.
actually I didn't actually read it. I must admit. Look, it's pretty simple. You can work it out in it's 5 different bank accounts with different percentages. I'm a lazy, so I didn't read the book, but I think I understand the principle, and it absolutely changed my business. I implemented it about 2.5 years ago. It changed my life for the better. So.
Well, I am an absolute book nerd, obviously, because I have a book club. So I definitely will be reading it. But I can't tell you how many books I have in lists of, oh, that'd be good for book club. That'd be good for book club that I have to read. Anyway.
You need to add this one to your list. This is the next one.
Oh, yes. Your book, of course. Well, okay. So that is perfect segue to where can we find you? Tell us all the things. I'll put it in the show notes, of course, but if someone's driving and they're thinking, I want to look you up later, where are you?
Well, thankfully, I'm pretty good at the old SEO game. So if you type Kate Toon into Google, you'll find all my bits. My main website is katetoon.com. I'm Kate Toon everywhere on Instagram, Clubhouse, Twitter, Facebook. And yeah, then you'll kind of be invited into the Tooniverse, and you can follow whichever path you wanna follow. But I've loved talking about this today, and I think, I've been following your podcast from when it first started. I remember listening to the first couple of episodes, and I just think it's such an important topic, and I'm really glad that you're spreading the word, because there may be other money podcasts. Most of them are pretty dull, Megan, let's be honest. So I think this one's fantastic, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk about this today. So thank you.
You are welcome. And I'm so touched for you to say that, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't know who's listening. Well, I assume. Well, that's a beautiful thing. All right. Thank you so much, Kate, for coming on the show.
Thanks so much.
Well, there you have it. Don't underestimate what a powerhouse Kate Toon is. I know she comes across as very casual, but she is a very savvy businesswoman, and she does amazing things for not just women, men as well, in business, about the behind the scenes stuff that we need to develop, the SEO, and don't worry if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by that, because you're not alone. That's why we have people like Kate. So go check her out. And in the meantime, if you want to take any of what you've heard on the podcast further and explore your own thoughts about money and money mindset, get in contact with me on my website at moneymindful.com.au. In the meantime, have a beautiful week. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Money Mindful podcast. For more info, visit moneymindful.com.au. For future episodes, be sure to subscribe. And remember, the information in this podcast is of a general nature only and does not take into account your personal circumstances or goals. Please seek professional advice for your own financial needs. Remember to have fun along the way.